My name's Mark. I'm one of the pastors here at Trillium. We've been looking at 1 Corinthians 13, and we're right at the very end. And there's this one line from the last couple of verses of 1 Corinthians 13 that I really love. It goes like this. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we shall see face to face. I'm not even sure what exactly it means totally, but I love what it brings out in me. I remember when I was studying music and I would be playing some beautiful music, say a piece by Bach. And as much as I was playing all the notes right, there was still a part of me that quite couldn't take it all in. I couldn't get it all inside of me. And I felt so frustrated by it because I wanted to connect with the music in the most profound way, but there was something in the way of that inside of me. And I remember coming across a quote by Bach where he said that his music was a pale imitation of the music that the angels were creating in heaven. That's what the sense of his own music that he had. And I'm thinking this is probably the greatest musician who ever lived, having this feeling about his own music being a pale imitation of the reality that's out there. And I think sometimes we sense there's this reality out there, but we're trapped inside the limitations of our own perception and we can't break out of it. And therefore it's like as if we're looking through a mirror dimly lit. And we sense within ourselves there's often so much more going on around us that we could take into ourselves, but we just can't seem to connect with it. It's interesting to me that often we have to look, in that case, retrospectively in life to find meaning. We look backwards and we see a sense of rationality in our lives, some kind of guiding reason or intelligence that brings us to the place of life where we find ourselves. And so often, in the moment, a catastrophe occurs for us, and then when we look back on it years later, we realize it wasn't a catastrophe at all. It was actually a blessing. We didn't get that job that we really thought we wanted, or we didn't get into the school that we thought was so important for us to get, or this relationship that we so desperately wanted ended, and in the moment it seems like a catastrophe, but when we look at it years, decades later, we realize there was a blessing in it for us. And the great challenge for us is that there comes a point in life where we are invited to stop looking retrospectively, but look instead in that kind of face-to-face experience we have in the immediacy of the moment of our lives. Through the understanding that there's this divine providence, this goodness pouring out for us through life, there comes a place and an opportunity for us that even within the minute, that minute of a moment of catastrophe, we can recognize that there's unfolding blessing for us. What we think is catastrophe can ultimately turn out to be blessing in our lives. And that's the great opportunity for us. But that means we have to find a way of looking beyond that mirror that's dimly lit, or that obscure way of seeing through a mirror that's clouded over. There's so many different ways to translate this. The word dimly is actually the word enigma. In Greek, it's also the same word in English. Enigma is that kind of puzzle, or that obscure truth, or that clouded over understanding. And in life, so often, it feels like that with each other because we're trapped within our own perception, within our own bodies. But the truth, of course, is that there's this wonderful world of sunlight on the outside of us. We live under the cloud cover of our own thinking. But on the other side of the cloud cover is this beautiful blue sky filled with sunlight and warmth for us. And that's how it is for God's love for us. We live under the dark cloud cover of our own thinking, but the presence of a bright light of love for us in that wonderful sense of blue open space is there right in the moment. And in fact, that light lives within us. It doesn't live just simply on the outside of us. And we're invited by Paul to awaken that deep light within us, so that when light on the out meets light on the in, there's an explosion of joy. So how do we awaken that deep light of love within us? How do we see through that mirror dimly lit? How do we get beyond the limitations of our perception? And Paul tells us it's actually quite simple. It's love. It's that deep divine love that we need to let go and have run over our lives. So let it move through our lives. Let it begin to clean up the limitations of our perception. Let us begin to clean up the mirror of our clouded vision Paul says that love is probably the only way we can break out of the limitations of our perception this day. And he invites us to embrace a way of life that Jesus revealed to us, a love based on a deep sense of surrender and softening, a love based on that deep compassion for one another, a love based on putting aside judgment against one another, of changing the foundational ways that we think about life, to challenge ourselves, to even admit that we're living on the inside of this dark, dimly lit mirror. I remember going to an open AA meeting and hearing this woman recount about the fact that her alcoholism retrospectively was a blessing for her. Even though her life had gone through some really hard times, even though her family and her friends had gone through some hard times with her, now where she stood in life, having practiced the 12-step program for so long, and where she'd come in herself, and the spiritual awakening and the truth that had been revealed to her in her life, and that sense of connection with reality had become so clean that she realized that the journey she'd be on was really a blessing for her. That what she thought was a catastrophe or a curse was actually the deepest form of blessing that God could give her. And she rejoiced over her alcoholism. And I think that that's the way that these enigmas work in our lives so often, the puzzle, the conundrum that we find ourselves in, that something that looks like catastrophe is actually the deepest form of blessing. What looks like a curse is the deepest form of blessing. What so sometimes look to us as opportunity is actually really needs to be a door closed for us so that we can move in better ways forward. Let God's Spirit guide you. Let your hearts open to the reign of love and the movement of love through your life. Let that love life within you take control of where you go. The Spirit of love is at work in you. The sunshine and the warm breeze that waits for you past that dimly lit mirror is here, in this place. Wherever you go, the blessing of God and God's goodness flows over your life, even when you can't see it. We can still learn to trust, We can hand over our lives to a power greater than ourselves, even when we don't really understand where it's taken us. We've seen it retrospectively. Now let's meet it face to face in this moment. Go in peace.